Benjamin.
Okay, so hey everyone, I'm Benjamin. I've been at Branson for, well, this is my second year at Branson, but I've been an online student my whole school career. And I really like the flexibility of online school and being able to do a bunch of different activities outside of school that you couldn't necessarily do in a brick and mortar school.
And I'm Casey, and this is my fifth year, going on my fifth year with Branson. I'm a junior this year, and I've kind of done a lot of different kinds of school. When I was younger, I was homeschooled, and then I went to public school for a while and wanted to come back home. So doing online school has been really great for me. I've loved it.
All right, so this is our presentation on note-taking. So first, we have a few note-taking strategies to share. And here's the first one. And this is a good strategy for like math classes or science classes like chemistry and physics where you have to do math and solve problems. So you can solve example problems given in a video or in the text using detailed steps and record them in a way that you can look back at what you wrote and use it to solve any kind of problem that has the same process. So first, you want to write the steps that the lesson provides. So for example, in a lot of chemistry lessons, they want you to write down what you know and what you don't know, then the formula that you'll need to use, then add the numbers you do know into the formula, and then solve. So write down those steps. Then if you have a specific example problem, follow those steps with that problem and make sure that you keep it really neat and tidy. And like a lot of times if you're just working on a problem, it'll get really messy because your brain goes everywhere and you're thinking in different places at once. But when you're taking your notes, you want to keep it super neat so that it's easy to follow later. And if there are many types of problems, you want to work through all of those so that you know how to do more than just one. So I may be great at or have a good idea of how to do exponential problems, but if I don't know anything about trigonometry, I need to take notes on that also. And labeling the sections based on the concept and process helps you organize that, so if you find a problem with trigonometry, you can look at your notes for that specifically. So here's a simple example of the step-by-step problem solving of basic math equations. So here it shows one step is to subtract the constant or to add the constant or divide and multiply. And I like the way that has a fold up cut out so that you can see the step, then fold it out and see an example of the step. And I think that's a very smart way to do it. And the color coding is also a really great way to help you remember what to do. And another strategy is mind maps. And mind maps are a type of word web, and they really help because they mimic the way your mind actually works. So you start with an overall concept, and then you link it to main points, no more than 5, because if you have more than 5 main points, some of them probably aren't actually main points, they're part of a different point. And then you keep breaking down the concepts to the level of detail that you're satisfied with, and that's not too complicated to follow. And you want to provide multiple examples for each concept or facts about the concept, and using pictures or audio files to make the mind map more exciting really helps you remember the information you put in it. And it's important to use short, simple phrases and abbreviations so that the mind map is clean and simple. Because if you're bogged down with a whole wall of text, you won't enjoy looking at your notes very much, which is the main purpose of making notes. So here's an example of a mind map about health. So you can see how it branches off into sleep and diet and exercise and stress, and then continues branching off into different ways to keep up your health or issues with health. And there are a lot of websites online that provide a program that allows you to make a mind map really easily and simply so that you don't have to do it on paper necessarily or take a lot of time learning a specific program.
Okay, and then another note-taking strategy that I often use is outlining. So outlining is one of the most common ones. It's kind of basic. It's kind of what we're taught to do, in grade school or junior high when we're making outlines for essays. Is the Roman numerals or the a bigger symbol for the first thing, and then space orientation moving downwards. So it makes it very organized and easy to look through. The most common type is to use dashes and dots, etc. But if the lesson is fast-paced and you're new to this method, organizing it can be harder to put everything down when it's going very quickly. So I use this a lot, and if it's a really, really fast-paced video, I usually pause it. But since I'm comfortable with it, or if you're a person that is comfortable with it, eventually you get used to it and you can do it pretty easily. So the advantages are when you're looking back over it, it's pretty easy to pull the main points out of because you can see clearly outlined what your main topics are and then what your subtopics, I guess, or your details are. And so it's great for material that's very organized and ones that move from broad topics to smaller details. So here's an example of an outline on a science class. And so, at the top it has the chapter name, and then as it goes down, it goes with Roman numerals and then letters and dots to explain the different pieces. And then another type is abbreviations. Some people try to write it all down in paragraph form, their notes, and that doesn't work very well. But if you want to actually write down a sentence that your professor or your teacher said that's very key to your topic, then you're probably going to want to use abbreviations in order to write faster or to remember it easier. So I just put in here some examples of these abbreviations. The first one's kind of chemistry. The reaction will not happen without 2 tablespoons of baking soda. So just using little symbols like the no symbol for not or W/O for without, just little things. Or then the next one, a math example, where if you're writing down how to do steps of a problem and you aren't doing it in the way that Benjamin showed earlier to organize your notes that way, then use abbreviations so that it's not quite so long when you go back through there. So, and then the last one, it's taking a very, very long sentence on about how our brain works and then breaking it down into just little pieces that you'll be able to remember all the information from. And here's just some examples of some abbreviations that are helpful and you guys can use if you'd like.
Okay, so now I'm going to talk about the note-taking strategy that I normally use, and it's a modified version of Cornell Notes. And if you don't know what Cornell Notes is, it's a way of breaking up your page of notes into sections that each have a different point. So over here in this picture, you can see you draw basically an eye off-center to the left of your page, and in the left-hand column, you put keywords or dates and events like the War of 1812 or something like that, and questions you have about the lesson or concepts in this column. And then in the big block on the right-hand side, you answer those questions or define those keywords or explain those events. So you can just look at the left-hand column and then find like the corresponding area in the right-hand column to learn more about that specific concept, which is really helpful for when you're going back over your notes. And then at the bottom in the block, you write a summary of the lesson or whatever you're taking notes on. And this summary should be no more than 3 sentences. So I say try to get 1 sentence summary, but if it's a really long lesson, maybe you'll need up to 3. But that way you can look at the bottom, get a quick overview of what that lesson is about, and then either look more in depth when you're reviewing your notes or just move on to the next lesson because you understand it. And it's really important to make these notes simple and use bullet points if you need to, because if you just write a copy of what's in the lesson or basically an essay on the subject, it's going to be really hard to follow, and you won't be able to link your keywords in the left column to the information about them in the right-hand block as easily. And here I have an example that I did a couple of years ago for my biology class. And you can see here I have the lesson, the pages in the textbook, and the date. And over here I have color-coded keywords like fermentation and lactic acid that I also match the highlight color in the actual text, so I can look for the green over here and then see the green in my text and learn more or review fermentation. And then another aspect of Cornell Notes that I don't always use is the left side of the page. And on the left side, you want to do pictures, diagrams, little mnemonics, things to help you remember important pieces of the lesson that don't go as well in text. And it helps your brain think a little bit differently about the concepts and remember specific diagrams, like this diagram of how fermentation works. But if you feel like you understand the lesson or there's nothing really to put on the left side, it's not as necessary, but it's really a good way to help remember concepts in a more simple or quick way than the text on the other side.
Okay, then my note-taking strategy is kind of a little bit outline-based and a little bit mind mapping. And like Benjamin mentioned earlier, colors really help you to remember things. So I use a lot of colors in my notes. I just kind of done my own thing with them, I guess. But that's what's really helpful, is you get to modify your notes to fit how you learn. So for me, I use plus signs for my main points and dashes for smaller ones. So kind of outline-based, but mine's a little bit less linear organized, I guess. It kind of goes all over the page. But my plus signs, they're for main points or definitions, or dashes for anything related to them. But I also use a lot of colors for a different color, I guess, for both my plus signs and my dashes. It helps me to draw my eye to each piece, and then I also draw some pictures and arrows in there, kind of mind mapping, just to keep my attention and help me to remember what happens in my lesson. So here are some examples of some of my notes. On the left side are some notes that I took for chemistry class, and this was a pretty short lesson, so it's just got little ones kind of all over the place. But you can see I put in a bunch of plus signs for both bigger topics and for definitions. And then here on the right side, we have an example of a concurrent class I'm taking, psychology. I took some notes for that where I drew in actual diagrams of the brain, and then I underlined some keywords, and I used both numbers and letters and a whole bunch of colors. So mine's kind of spontaneous, I guess.
And I think that's all we have. So in general, just make sure that you pick a strategy that is easy for you and something that you'll be able to look at afterwards and understand well. Because that's the main point of notes, is being able to look back at whatever you wrote later on, like before the final, and help you review or remember concepts that you learned earlier in the year.
Awesome. Thank you guys for that great presentation. Now I'd like to, just like we did last time, open it up to some questions. Anything you have, note taking, or, even if it's not completely related to note taking, go ahead and ask. You can either type into the questions box or I've unmuted most of you. Harrison and Morgan, I'm going to unmute you now. You can go ahead and remute on your end. But if you'd rather just speak it, you can speak it. And anything you'd like to ask our volunteer experts here. So I do have a question myself. Casey and Benjamin, when do you primarily take your notes? Do you take them only during DIs? Do you not take them during DIs? Do you go back and watch DIs? Do you take them during Compass lessons or videos? What method do you follow for when is the best time to actually take notes?
Well, most of the time I take notes on videos or lessons that have a lot of text. Not as much during Compass lessons as maybe I should, but normally when I do the Compass lessons, I just look through it, and unless it's very complicated or it has a lot of specific formulas I need to remember, I don't take as many notes. And I normally don't take notes during DIs unless it's like a science or math class where I'm getting new information or learning how to do something. But in like history DIs or in English DIs, I normally don't take as many notes, and I just watch the recording if I feel like I need to review something from that section.
Okay, excellent. Casey, any different response to that?
Actually, I'm pretty much the same on DIs. Our math DIs or science DIs know where you guys are actually teaching, then I definitely take notes on those. But the ones where we aren't getting a bunch of new information, we're just reviewing that week's work or talking about a small topic from that week, I don't take as many notes unless I feel like I need to definitely review that information. And then I'm a little bit the opposite on Compass lessons. I usually lean towards taking notes on Compass lessons. And then sometimes I don't take as many notes on text-based things. And sometimes I do. I guess it just kind of depends on what I feel like I need to really focus on learning.
Okay, awesome. All right, a couple questions have come in. Natalia is asking, Benjamin, could you mention that website you talked about last time we met, that kind of you can block yourself out of certain websites to stay focused?
Okay, well, it's not actually a website. It's an add-on on Chrome. So if you're using Google Chrome, you can go into settings and click on add-ons, and I don't remember what it was called exactly, but it's an add-on that you can add within the browser itself, not necessarily a website.
Okay, I want to say it was called Stay Focused or something like that. So maybe
I think so.
If we can, I can pull up your slides from last time too, and we can find that.
Okay.
Another question from Riley. Would you be able to email some examples of the different ways you take notes so that they could actually look at them? Would you guys be comfortable doing that?
I would be comfortable doing that, sure.
Awesome. So you could just go ahead and email me a few of your examples, especially if you have some different examples, like, maybe for English it makes more sense to do a mind map, but for math you prefer, outline or however it is. I know, Casey, we do the PowerPoint notes, but if you could just do a couple different examples, email them to me, and I'll go ahead and email them out to everyone who's here today, or whenever you guys get a chance. Okay? Great.
Sure.
Other questions? Go ahead and, like I said, if you want to unmute yourself, you can ask that way or type it into the questions box. I have another question. Do you guys feel like you most typically handwrite your notes or type your notes or both?
I most typically handwrite my notes because I find it easier to be able to look at the computer screen and watch the video without having two tabs open at once and just write quickly. I'm not necessarily a very fast typist, even though, I have been doing online school for a while, but I prefer the speed and, I guess, more control over formatting that I have with handwriting my notes.
Awesome. Casey?
I usually handwrite mine as well, except for maybe sometimes with compass lessons where there's something on the screen that I want to take a screenshot of. I kind of do both for compass lessons. I take screenshots of their diagrams sometimes, and then I write my own notes.
Very cool. And then I guess to piggyback off of that, so then do you have your own like notebook for each class, or do you keep all of your notes together? How do you kind of organize your notes so that they're easy to find and go back to?
I have a notebook for each class, and sometimes if I have a class or two that I'm not taking a lot of notes in, I will combine them. So, like last year, I had 2 English classes at once, and I wasn't taking a ton of notes in either, so I just put both classes in the same notebook and made sure to label them specifically so I knew which one was which.
Okay. What about you, Casey?
I did the same thing too, actually. I have like my own notebook for math because I take a ton of notes on my math classes, and then like my history class, I don't have as many notes for it, so I just throw that in with some of my extra chemistry notes from compass lessons. So that one kind of, just like Benjamin said, has a couple subjects, and then there are other subjects where I take a lot and I have their own notebook for them.
Okay, excellent. Any other questions? Anything else you'd like to hear from our... Okay, so here's a good question. What would you recommend be the most effective way to taking notes if you have issues with being interested in notes? So any sort of tips to make them, either more interesting or rationale behind making sure you do them even when you don't want to?
Definitely for me, I would say use a bunch of color. I like to do that to keep myself on track, I guess. It makes the pieces that I really want to focus on stand out, and it keeps me interested in what I'm doing.
Color, that's a good idea.
A lot of times I'll use a lot of sketches in my notes. So if there's a diagram I want to write down, I'll make it more elaborate than it probably needs to be. That way I'm creatively invested in my notes more than just doing it because I have to. It's something that if you do something you like within something you don't like, you'll start to enjoy it more than if you just struggle through it so you can go do something you like somewhere else.
Awesome. Great suggestions. And I just found the Google Chrome extension that you were talking about last week, so I'm going to go ahead and shoot that out. It's called Stay Focused, but focus doesn't have an E at the end. And if you just Google that, and I'm also going to include in there the Google address that came up when I did it. So that was the app that Benjamin talked about last week. Oh, do you have it open too? Yep, right there. So you should see it on the screen. Perfect. Excellent. Any other questions, comments, concerns, anything else you'd like to hear from our experts? I do want to mention one other thing that maybe you might not know. We're in a webinar right now, just like most of your DIs are. If you look at where you're seeing Benjamin's screen, at the upper right-hand corner, just below the X, you should see a little camera button. And what that camera will do if you click it is it will automatically take a screenshot of whatever is on the presenter's screen at that time. So I always recommend that to my math students, is that if you click that, I think it automatically will just send all of those pictures right to your desktop, but you can change where they go. And so, for example, in my math classes, I know sometimes I probably go faster than kids are able to write. But if you take that screenshot, if you don't have everything done, click that little camera button, it will take a screenshot, and you'll be able to quickly revisit that screen without maybe having to go back and rewatch the whole recording. So that's just another tip for when you're in a live DI that might be helpful for you. Awesome. Another tip, there's an app, if you have an iPhone, called App Block Stay Focused. This one, Focus, does have the E, and you can use that on your phone for the same type of thing. So that would be, if you really need to focus on getting your notes done, you can use that app as well. Thanks for sharing that, Natalia. Well, awesome. I know I definitely took away a lot from this presentation. I myself was surprised at the fact that you guys both handwrite your notes and not type. I would imagine that we'd have more kids typing, but I think handwriting is a better way for it to kind of stick with you. And I think that's a great technique to know about. Any last minute questions, comments, concerns before we go ahead and break up for today? I do appreciate you all being here. I would like to keep doing these about every 2 weeks, but 2 weeks from today is the last day before fall break. So that's on the 22nd. Is that something you think that you'd still want to come and meet on the 22nd, or do you think you would rather wait and do it 3 weeks from today when we return from break? So if you wouldn't mind just quick answering the questions box, whether you would want to meet the 22nd in 2 weeks or wait and do it 3 weeks would be the 29th. I am worried about attendance the day before fall break. So if you could just kind of give me a heads up, we can get a tentative plan. Okay, I've got 1 vote for 3 weeks, 1 maybe. 22nd would be okay there. Okay. Okay, so I am seeing most people say 2 weeks is okay. So let's go ahead and tentatively plan on that. We'll meet again in 2 weeks. We'll have a new topic, and we'll just continue like this every 2 weeks, trying to have a new topic and meeting just to kind of get some new information out there, hear from some experts. If you have a topic request, something you would like to hear from your peers, please let me know. Shoot me an email or give me a phone call and we can chat that way. We'll plan on meeting in 2 weeks, the 22nd at 10 a.m. again. Thank you all for being here. Oh, Casey, I see your hand raised. Do you have a question? Or is that maybe an accident?
No, I just wanted to say real quick, guys, too, taking notes on a class that you really don't have much interest in or that you find is hard for yourself can actually help you out. I was always one who never really liked math until my freshman year. I started taking notes on my math class, and I actually found out that I understood it better, and I started liking it a lot more once I started taking notes and actually looking closer at my information.
Awesome. Great advice. And as Casey's math teacher, she does a very good job in math now, so I'm surprised to hear she didn't like it up until freshman year. Benjamin, any last words before we break up for today?
Just remember, notes, even if you don't like them, they will help you, and just try to do with them. And if you feel like what you're doing right now isn't working, try something new, like maybe one of the techniques that we said, something completely different. Try something, and eventually you'll find something that you enjoy enough to make it helpful.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for presenting again. I really appreciate that. When you get a chance, if you wouldn't mind shooting me some examples of your notes that I can pass along, I'll send an email out to all of you attendees with those example notes. If you are watching this recording and you'd also like to see the example notes, just shoot me, Mrs. Nativat, a quick email, and I'll be happy to send those along that way too. Have a great rest of your week. Thanks for taking time out to be here, and we'll see you all again in 2 weeks, hopefully.